Do you know who your kids are talking to online right now? An Australian teenager thought he did, sending messages and racy photos to a teenage girl. But he wasn't talking to a teenage girl. He was talking to scammers in Nigeria who threatened to send those photos to family and friends if he didn't send them $500. Hours later, he took his own life. The latest victim of a sextortion scam targeting children all over the world. Superintendent Matt Kraft joins me in the studio. Superintendent, look, I think to us it's some photos and a couple of $100, but this schoolboy, it was so big he took his own life.
You look at so much more for that victim. It had a high emotional impact, particularly on that victim and also to the victim's family. It's prolonged. It's extremely tragic.
I mean, this is a kid who came from a loving home, he had great mates, and he thought he was texting a teenage girl. Can you take us through what happened? He
was tricked. He received some communication from what he thought was a young lady. As that conversation progressed, there was exchanges of photographs, in particular scantily clad photos, bikini shots, and then that progressed into nudes, and he was then subsequently encouraged to do the same.
So he then sends an explicit photo of himself, and that's when the threats start. Give us this money or we're going to send these photos to your family and friends.
Look, the pressure piles on at that point in time. So that's when the scammers know that they have the upper hand and they are able to exploit this young person. And that's where it's extremely tragic, in that individual didn't really know what they should be doing.
And this poor boy in that moment, how desperate he must have felt.
Look, absolutely. You know, not understanding what to do, where to go and seek some advice and some help. And then unfortunately we had some extremely tragic consequences.
See, I would think with something like this that kind of grooming it would take weeks or months. But it was 7 hours from when they first made contact to when he ended his life.
In this case, it was a very short duration. This individual was not targeted. It could happen to any individual that has, you know, a communication device.
So hang on, when you say he wasn't targeted, do you mean that they just sort of cast the net wide to see who they would actually hook?
Look, exactly right. They send out, you know, thousands of messages hoping to get a response. And that one person who does respond, they get on the hook and they start that banter, that general banter, to try and befriend them.
How does a case like this affect you?
Look, it does. It has an impact, absolutely. But it's not so much about the police here. It's about the individuals, the victim's family. But what did galvanise us, and it did as a law enforcement agency, said we need to do something about this. This was so tragic. This could happen to anybody. And this young boy thought that he was alone.
Well, this is where it's extraordinary, because your officers in the AFP worked tirelessly to track down the culprits. And I was in Nigeria a few years ago for 60 Minutes on a scammers raid. It is a really big country and this is a massive industry. How did you find these two alleged offenders in a country of 200 million?
Look, it's a joint operation. So you mentioned the Australian Federal Police, they were central to this. The FBI also played a part in this. And credit needs to go to the Nigerian authorities, who were tireless in their efforts to try and locate these people. As you mentioned, they found them in a slum within 25 million people. So we had a few false starts, but, you know, finally we got the result where these individuals were identified and arrested. So that's a great result for Australian law enforcement, where we work together.
Well, and I think it also goes to show that this is a problem that's now being taken seriously worldwide, that you'd have so many organisations working together. These two that have been picked up, what will happen to them now? Will they face justice here in Australia?
Look, the process now is that it's subject to a formal Nigerian police investigation. We will provide our information. They'll be prosecuted over there for the crimes that have been committed here against our victim. In addition to that, there are other matters which now the Nigerian authorities have been made aware of, which that information has come from a number of electronic devices that were seized at the time.
So there are potentially other victims that these offenders have targeted at some stage, is what you're saying?
That's what will be alleged, that it's not only our victim in this case, but there's certainly evidence of other offending involving sextortion.
When you look at how wide sextortion is, I mean, in New South Wales alone, there's been an increase of almost 400% in these kind of cases in 18 months. Does that say we are losing the battle?
Look, I don't think it does. What it does represent is a willingness of victims to come forward. So not only are we educating individuals, there's more avenues to report these matters, and victims feel comfortable coming forward.
OK, but if you're that young kid in that moment and you've handed over photos and that's when you realise you've been scammed, is there anything that the police can do in that moment? I mean, they're demanding money, they've got the photos. By
disengaging, stop communicating, stop sending photographs and notifying the police, you can start to take back a little bit of control. There is legislation in New South Wales that helps us remove images, from various platforms.
You're an officer of the law, you're also a dad. What kind of conversation should we be having with our kids to ensure they're not the next victim?
Look, I acknowledge these conversations are awkward. They are awkward, but parents need to have them. Sextortion wasn't a thing when I went to school. Parents need to educate themselves about what sextortion is and then have those conversations with their children, monitor their communication devices and ask them the question, what would you do if you were to receive a photograph of a scantily clad young lady? How would you respond?
Despite the commitment from law enforcement all around the world, did you seriously think you were going to see anyone arrested for this?
Look, not at the beginning, because you follow the trail where the evidence takes you, and at times we hit a roadblock, but we persisted, and that's a credit to the staff at the Cybercrime Squad.
Can I ask, how's the family?
Look, the family, it's still raw. They're good people. They've lost their son, and meeting them, it was emotional. But they're very supportive of the ideas that we need to talk to our young people. Parents need to be aware of sextortion, and they need to talk to their sons and daughters about what it is that may occur.
So your message to any person, or particularly a kid who finds himself in this situation?
Yeah, look, stop communicating with these individuals straight away. Don't pay any sort of money at all, but make sure you go and tell a trusted adult, a family friend, a parent, an adult. You are a victim and you deserve our support, and there are things that law enforcement or police can do for you. So come forward, we can help you.
Don't suffer in silence.
Absolutely don't suffer in silence.
OK, well, thank you so much for your time, Superintendent Matt.
Thank you.
Craft, appreciate it. And if you or someone you know is struggling to cope, you can contact Lifeline on 13 11 14.